I'd now like to introduce and call as our guest speaker Jennifer McCann, Junior Minister of the Office of First Minister and Deputy First Minister in Northern Ireland. Jennifer, take the stand.
Can I just first of all start off by thanking John and Peter and the rest of the Congress for giving me the opportunity to come today to speak to you. I know that Martin McGuinness, the Deputy First Minister, was supposed to be here, but unfortunately couldn't be here. And I suppose the agenda for this conference highlights the deep and divisive impact that austerity continues to have across these islands. The austerity agenda pursued by the British government at Westminster and that of the Tory lights in Leinster House offers nothing but misery to the people throughout Ireland. In the north in particular, where we have already had 1.5 billion slashed from the block grant, we are now faced with the prospect of even further cuts in the region of 25 billion in the time ahead. And we are likely to learn of those further cuts tomorrow when the British Chancellor George Osborne delivers his budget. This attack on the most vulnerable in society and on public services is unnecessary, it's unjust, and is totally unacceptable. These proposed cuts would impact on everyone in our society, and not just on the unemployed. Their impact would be felt in public services, jobs, tax credits, benefits for those in low incomes, and by older members of our community also. In the 26 counties, the implications of austerity have been felt everywhere. Public services and welfare were cut, new taxes imposed, workers' rights reduced, wages and hours cut. And as a result, we've had hardship, poverty and inequality increase. And young people have left these shores in their thousands in search of work elsewhere. And that is what austerity looks like for people. It is not some alien concept talked about by economists. It's real lives of real people. And that is why Sinn Féin have been to the fore in opposing austerity right across this island and in Europe. And in the north, where I'm a junior minister in the Office of the First and Deputy First Ministers, we have blocked the welfare bill and the cuts that the Tories demand that we impose on communities. Our position on austerity is clear. We remain totally opposed to the Tory cuts agenda in principle and in practice. It is an anti-community agenda and it is an anti-democratic agenda. We have a mandate to oppose cuts and we intend to use it. And we will not be part of any agenda of cuts imposed on our communities at the bidding of a cabinet of millionaires who have no mandate in the north. The Tory government and its supporters within sections of political unionism, together with the pro-austerity economists and elements of the right-wing media, continually tell us that we simply have to accept it and that there simply isn't any more money. But they are wrong. There is always more money. It is a matter of how that money is spent and what governments do with it. The British government and the unionist parties publicly claimed before the recent Westminster election that they want to see 2% of Britain's GDP being used on military expenditure. David Cameron has absolutely no problem spending $23 billion to replace the Trident nuclear submarines while cutting the same amount from public expenditure. So there is clearly money in the system. As the great stalwart of the left in Britain, the late Tony Benn, said, if they can find the money to kill people, they can find the money to help people. The British government's current economic and political strategy and ideology is in fact incompatible with the Good Friday Agreement and the process of democratic change that underpins the peace process itself. They also tell us there is no alternative to austerity, and they are wrong about that also. The public here do not want austerity. They have made that very clear. Sinn Féin stood on a platform of anti-austerity in successive recent elections and received 500,000 votes. The Tories, by comparison, failed to retain their deposits in the constituencies in which they stood in the north. And it is not just Sinn Féin and the Labour movement in Ireland and in Britain that is saying austerity is wrong. Increasing numbers of eminent economists worldwide are articulating the view that austerity is a flawed economic strategy. And there is a clear alternative to austerity, and support for that alternative is growing. In Dublin, tens of thousands of people have taken to the streets to protest against unfair and unnecessary water charges. In London, up to 250,000 people recently took part in an anti-austerity protest addressed by my party colleague Martin McGuinness. And a similar demonstration took place in Scotland at the same time. And of course, the Scottish people have shown their total rejection of Tory austerity with their support for the SNP. And most recently, the people of Greece have led the way in opposing austerity and set an example in their support for their democratically elected leaders in the face of attempts to impose that hardship from Europe. Closer to home, there are many organisations and groups in our society who are opposed to the austerity. Churches, community groups, and of course the trade union movement continue to be at the coalface of the campaign. And the task facing us today and now is to build a united and cohesive campaign, bringing together all strands of opposition to the cuts agenda so that we can speak with one clear voice against austerity. It has long been our position that we must use our collective strength to confront and confound this current Tory government and their disastrous agenda. We need to see a nexus between the Irish Labour movement and the Scottish, Welsh and English TUCs, and I want to acknowledge the ICTU's efforts in beginning that process and for their constant support for the peace process. The alternative to austerity is investment and growth, equality and prosperity. It is workable and sustainable finances for our political institutions and a fair recovery for all. The reckless adherence to austerity by the British government is threatening our chances of recovery. It is also threatening the future of the political institutions in the North and the huge progress that has been made over the last 2 decades of the peace process. In fact, the approach of the Tory government at Westminster presents the biggest threat to the political institutions that we have seen to date. The determination of the British government to stick to its Thatcherite policies and jeopardising the future of the power-sharing institutions of the Good Friday Agreement. Those institutions are now at risk, and the Tory government is gambling with the future of those institutions as part of their crusade against the vulnerable and against public services. Both the British and Irish governments have a responsibility to stand up for the Good Friday Agreement and the institutions that create it. The Irish government in particular, as a co-guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement, must work to ensure the institutions have a workable and sustainable budget to deliver for all in our communities. People that we represent do not want to see the institutions collapse. They recognise the value of locally elected and accountable representatives working to improve the lives of all our citizens. And their view has to be heard, and more importantly, their view has to be listened to. The voice of those people and of the trade union movement and of all the groups who oppose austerity must be heard by the British government. And I would urge everyone in civic society, those in the business community, the voluntary and the community sector, the churches and the trade union movement, to come together in a positive alliance to defend our communities from the cuts agenda and to stand up for public services and to defend the democratic political institutions. There is now an opportunity to challenge this disastrous agenda, and we must seize it to create a fairer and more equal society for all. And I just wanted to finish off by saying, I've been around talking to a number of different organisations, different individuals and different groups in civic society over this past period with other colleagues in the party. And I really have to say, we more than ever need to get together and to create that alliance going forward. And I want to say, I want to continue to work with people and to work with other progressive forces right across this island in the weeks and months ahead, because really, I can't emphasise enough the risk to the political institutions at the current time. And again, just to thank Peter and John and everyone here for giving me this opportunity to address your conference today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Jennifer, for that contribution.